Muted. So at any rate, everyone should be muted now. So we shouldn't hear nobody talking. If you have a question, there is a chat box. So if you look there in the GoToMeeting software, there's a little chat box. You can type in a question. That'll pop up on my secondary screen, and then I can answer it as those come up. If there's anything that you want to see specifically about EasyStone, like a specific topic you want to see demonstrated or something, do let me know. I do have a couple of topics that I'll cover, unless someone has something specific. And then we have a couple of designs. So again, these final two sessions, tonight's session will be recorded. So if you have to leave early or whatever, or you want to review the topics that we've covered in this session, they'll be available in the recording. Now, I did screw up, I have to confess. Session 12, I did not record. So that last session we had, I accidentally did not hit the record button, but this time I did. So all the previous sessions, there was actually 2 sessions that I messed up on. Session 5 was not recorded, and session 12 was not recorded. All the other sessions are available in that EasyStone playlist. In fact, for those of you who are new, I do want to cover this for you as well. We go over here to YouTube. We'll go to my channel. So what you want to do, if you want to go to the EasyStone channel, it'll be youtube.com/EasyStone templates, no spaces. It just all EasyStone templates. And looks like I'm in the wrong. So let's go to that here. Let's just type in. There we go. So you see there in the address bar, EasyStone templates. So this is my channel here. And if there's a specific topic that you want to see information about, there's this little search box, this little magnifying glass here, and just about anything you can think of in terms of search terms probably is covered. Because if we look here, I don't know how many videos we have exactly, but we have bunches. So at any rate, you want to hit that little search box and we can search for a specific topic. So let's say, for example, I want to learn about working with TrueType fonts. I could just type in TTF for TrueType font. And you can see there's some different videos here on creating TrueType fonts and getting a stone count within Silhouette Studio for those of you who might use a Cameo cutter. Now, you know what I think of Cameo cutters, but for those of you who have them and want to use them, there's some information there about working with rhinestone fonts within Silhouette Studio. But anyhow, there's all kinds of different things about TrueType fonts. Another popular topic might be mockups. So if we type in mockup here, and you can see there's some different information about creating mockups. And of course, for those of you who are new to EasyStone, what we mean by a mockup is if you want to have like a shirt, and then you want to put a simulated rhinestone design on the shirt as a mock-up to send to the customer for approval and whatnot. It says we have no sound. Let's see here. Is anyone else having issues with sound? Okay. So sound is good. All right. So Kathy, your sound problems could be on your end because everyone else says they have sound. But if anyone else has sound issues, do let me know so we can address those. I want to take a second, answer a couple of these questions that I see coming in. I did finally finish Anne's design, her house design. You probably saw that posted on the group here a while back, and we worked on that like maybe session 2 or 3, something like that. So I finished that and the font that went with that. But Anne asked if you could go over the macro more in depth. I don't know what that means. So if you have more specific information or a specific section or something you want me to cover, I would definitely will. And Dax asked if Corel, if EasyStone was an add-on to CorelDRAW, and it is. So you do have to have CorelDRAW, CorelDRAW X5, CorelDRAW X6, CorelDRAW X7. Now, we do recommend that you use the 32-bit version across the board. So no matter which version of CorelDRAW you use in X5, X6, or X7, we do recommend that you install the 32-bit version of CorelDRAW, even if you have a Windows 64-bit computer, which most of us do. All right, so let's go ahead and work on something that I haven't demonstrated in a previous session, but came up recently this past week. And it's good to know that this functionality exists in EasyStone. It's one of those functions that's there, and it's actually quite useful, but it's probably a bit more advanced type of functionality, and it involves working with fonts. So, and in working with this user, what I have found out that there's a lot more features in version 4 than in what a lot of you have, which is version 3.1. Now, all of those who registered for the master class, you've been a bit spoiled because all these past 6 weeks, you've had the new availability of a new EasyStone 4. With these new functionality. So if you see me demonstrate something and you go look in your macro and it looks slightly different, or you don't even have that function at all, it's because we're using version 4 here, and you may be using the demo of version 3.1, or even an earlier version of EasyStone for that matter. So what I want to show you here is kind of a step-by-step process of working with a font and adding a weave box around a font. There's some unique functionality that EasyStone has. So we're going to go here on the home page here of EasyStone and open up our font manager. And we're going to go over here to this Easy Font. And in here, there's actually 4 tabs. So you have Easy Font, Prep for Cut, Miscellaneous Options, etc. So we're going to start over here on Easy Font. And there's an option down here at the bottom. It says Start Font Layout. And really all that button does is just add some text. Now this is text that we would commonly set up for use when we're creating a rhinestone font, okay? So it's just uppercase letters, lowercase letters, and all of our numbers in the pound sign. That's kind of my default. How I set it up when I'm creating a rhinestone font. I at least include those characters. Now sometimes, you might include a $sign or a comma or a period, other characters, // // whatever. But this is what I do with every font that I make, if I'm making the entire font, that is. So at any rate, so our next step then is to go back to the Font Finder tab, and we're going to actually specify a font here, which in my case, it's called Bebas. Now this was a font that I gave away a long time ago. I had given away this font, and it's available for purchase in our store now. But you can see here, we have all of our uppercase, and then notice here for the lowercase, it's 0000000. Well, that's because this particular font, there was no lowercase option. And then, of course, there is no pound option, so that's why you have a 00 here, but then you have all of our numbers. Well, for this example, I'm just going to go with this. Just go with it here, okay? So to explain what we're going to do here is, let's just say I've purchased Bebas, or maybe you've created your own rhinestone font. And there's these things called a sticky flock version of rhinestone fonts. Now, most of your vendors who sell rhinestone fonts these days, most of them always include the sticky flock version as well. Just depends on what the font is. Script fonts don't really work very well for a sticky flock font. And I'm going to explain what a sticky flock font is here in a moment if you're not already aware. But just kind of bear with me for a moment so you understand the process here. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add some space between letters, first of all. And so we're going to select our text here and then right click on text spacing. And that will bring this dialog box up, and we can enter a value here, and I'm just going to enter a value of say 200. And all that's going to do is, you can see all that does is it spreads our letters out. Okay. Now the next thing we have to do, now currently this is still editable text. We could type in whatever we want at this point still, but what we need to do is we need to take all these little circles and we need to break them all up into individual little circles. And that's what this function does right here, break apart rhinestone text. So we'll go ahead and do that. Okay. Now, if we select one of these circles, it doesn't matter which one, and we go back over here to EasyStone, that circle that we have selected, you can see EasyStone's telling us it's 1.45 millimeters. Well, we need to be able to specify how big that circle is. So if we're going to cut out our template, or maybe we're not even using templates, maybe we're designing for a rhinestone machine or whatever, that circle still has to be a specific size. If we're designing for a rhinestone machine, we would use probably 2.8 millimeter, because that's what my machine would require me to use to see that as a SS10 stone. Now, when we're working with templates, we have to have a slightly larger circle, and in my case, I set that at 3.4 millimeters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select one circle, and we're going to right-click on this button right here, which is Scale Design. Okay, so we'll go ahead and right-click on that, Scale Design. Now, I should point out too that there is a Scale Design button on the Specialty tab too. What I found when I was using EasyStone in the early goings is I was having to switch between tabs all the time. I'd go from Stone tab to the Editing tab to the Specialty tab to the Stone Fill tab, and I didn't want to have to do that. So what I've done is I've taken all the most commonly used functions and put them here on the main screen. So at first, it may look a bit daunting what all these buttons do, but the more and more you use EasyStone, it really does kind of become automatic because you know what all this functionality does. So what we're doing here by right-clicking on SD here, what we're really doing here is we're telling EasyStone, measure what that circle currently is and store that in memory. Essentially, that's what we're asking it to do. And then we would select all of our alphabet, and when we left-click on Scale Design, then what we're doing is we're telling EasyStone, okay, now take that numeric value that we saved, which in this case was 1.45 millimeters, and scale it appropriately so that it becomes whatever we specify here. So here's where we specify our stone size. We have all these different options. If we click this little button here to the right, we can define those stone sizes, but these are what comes predefined for you. So we want to make those SS10s, and then we're just going to hit SD, and it will automatically scale. It has the formula built into it. So now if we click any one of these circles, you can see that the circle is in fact now the 3.4 millimeters that we need. Okay, so that step is done. Now the next thing that we have to do is we have to look at this. If you look at this a little bit more closely, you can see these circles really aren't absolutely perfect. They're just a little bit odd shaped. And that is true with a lot of fonts, a lot of rhinestone fonts that we purchase. They're just slightly odd shaped, and that is done in the conversion process. So converting it from a shape into a rhinestone font, and now we're coming back to a shape essentially. So at any rate, we have a simple fix. We can just select that, and we would hit here on the Stone Fill tab, we can hit Resize Replace, and what that will do is that will go through. Now there's 2,404 circles that it has to make into a perfect circle. So essentially what it does is it replaces every single circle with a new shape is what's happening. So now when we look in and look closely, you can see that now all of these are absolutely perfect circles. All right, so the next thing that we have to do, and we've included all these tools to make the process a little bit easier, but the next thing that we have to do is we have to group all these letters together. So all of the circles for A are grouped together, all the circles for B are grouped together. And believe it or not, once upon a time, I literally had to select the letter and hit group in CorelDRAW, which is Control G, by the way, one by one by one. And I thought, oh boy, I ain't gonna do that no more, because it's just too time consuming. You can get it done, but boy, it was time consuming. So what we do is we have a functionality here over here on the fonts tab. It says group letters, and there's a tolerance setting. So what we're asking EasyStone is to look at all these circles, and any circle that is within 2 millimeters of another one, group it together. And what you wind up with when we hit group letters, what you wind up with is it goes through and makes all those calculations for us. And you could see, in fact, it told us that there are 26 shapes created, and it just so happens there's 26 letters in the alphabet. All right, so it may seem more complicated than it really is, but like I said, once you understand all the individual steps, it's actually not too bad. So now what we want to do is just tell EasyStone to throw a weed box around all these letters. So we do that back over here in our font manager. If we click on Easy Font, notice that there's all these options up here. When I resize the circles, I could have done that right here. I could have entered a value and hit Process Font, and it would have resized them all. And you can see there's the resize replace if I wanted them all a perfect circle. If I wanted to group letters, I could have done all that function right here in the font manager. I didn't have to do it in the main EasyStone screen. So you'll see a lot of functions duplicated in different areas, just depending on what task you're working on given time. But what we want is this right here, which is an easy weed margin. And we'll go ahead and choose create the weed, and you can see what it's done here. It's now created a box around every single letter. And also note that as part of that process, the letter and the box have been combined as one. All right. And the reason that's been combined as one is because this option was checked. When you have that little checkbox next to create the weed, it will also group the newly created box with the letter. And that's important for our next step. I just wanted to show you our next step. So let's just say, for example, that we've created a rhinestone font. We want to create a sticky flock version of it. And now we want, we don't really have a need right at this very moment to cut out the entire alphabet. I had somebody come in, they wanted a specific set of words, and we don't really want to have to take time to cut the whole alphabet out. So what we can do is we can make a selection and go back into our font manager, and we have this kind of nifty little thing here. It's on the main tab. You see here it says EasyStone Font Finder, but it's called Virtual TTF. And what that allows us to do is we can enter a word. So let's just say that the customer needs Ashley and Madison. Those are the current words that we have to do. So we can just type out Ashley and Madison, and the character spacing we won't worry about. We'll just leave it at 0, and then go ahead and choose create. And what will happen is it will go through and pull just those letters that we requested. So there it is. There's Ashley and Madison. And so we can cut just those letters for the time being, knowing that later we can cut whatever other letters we want and be ready to go. So it's just another option that we have available to us. Now, the other thing that's kind of neat is you can see we have Ashley and Madison. Let's just go ahead and delete that. The other thing that's kind of neat that we can do here is we can specify what letters we need. So let's just say we've already cut the entire alphabet, and now we want some additional letters. We can just type in whatever additional letters we want. So in this case, I want a couple more A's, a couple more E's, a couple more O's, however you want to do it. And then when I choose create, it'll pull those appropriate letters for me and allow me to go ahead and cut out those extra letters that I need. All right, so there is some really good benefits of using all this functionality. Of course, you have to really get into the software and understand what all these functions actually do and why they exist. But once you understand how everything works, I think you'll find that functionality is actually quite useful. Now, let's talk about something else that is somewhat related. Like I say, there is so much functionality in here, and we spent a crazy amount of time in developing all this stuff. Because I wanted to be, as someone who produces rhinestone fonts, kind of for a living, I sell lots of rhinestone designs and lots of rhinestone fonts. This is all kinds of functionality that I needed to be able to deliver the product, to you. So what we want to do is we want to be able to take our newly created font here with our little sticky flock weed boxes all ready to go, and we want to cut out the entire alphabet. But our sticky flock is a particular size. All right, our template material doesn't necessarily have to be sticky flock, but our template material that we're going to cut these letters out has to be a specific size. So I don't really know exactly how to arrange all these letters so they fit on the sheet that I'm going to be working with. So if we're using roll goods, what we can do is we can just type in the width of our roll, which in my case is going to be 15 inches. And for those of you who are looking to purchase template material, we only sell it by the sheet. And that's because that's how we use it, is by the sheet. We don't use it by the roll. I think it's just easier for me to, I only cut, like one template at a time anyhow. So it's not like I set up 4, 5 templates and cut a whole bunch of templates I want. I only cut one at a time. And I just think it's easier to use sheets. So our sheets come 12 by 14. That's how the sheets come. But if you're using a roll, we can type in the width of our roll, which would be, in this case, 15 inches. And I definitely recommend using 15-inch rolls. I've used 24-inch rolls. I've never really used anything smaller than, but I know you can get 9-inch rolls as well. And I think you can probably even get 12-inch rolls for Cameo users. But I really think the 15-inch roll gives you the best bang for your buck, and you wind up wasting the least amount of template material, but to each their own. But anyhow, that's what I typically will use, is a 15-inch roll. But for the material height, I won't enter a value because we're going to put it on a roll. So EasyStone can create however big a sheet it needs in terms of length, but the width, we can only do 15-inch wide. And then we have to specify an offset margin. And what this means is the offset margin from the border. So we know that our template material is 15 inches. I would recommend a border of 1/4 of an inch. And so what we'll actually wind up being able to cut is we're taking 1/2 inch off of 15. So really we're going to have 14.5 inches of cuttable area in this particular scenario. We're going to ask for 1/8 of an inch spacing. That's what I like to use. You could, in theory, have no spacing between characters. I like to have 1/8 of an inch spacing. That's just my personal preference. And then we're going to select all of what we want to be arranged on our sheet and click on Create Cut Layout and let EasyStone do its job. Now, I'm glad this happened, believe it or not, because it's a weird error that we get. I don't quite understand why. I've never been able to figure it out. It's highly annoying, so I'm glad it happened. So it'll probably happen to you too, but there is a simple fix. So for some reason, if you just copy this information and create a new page, so we'll create a new sheet and paste it. That is still selected, and now when we hit Create Cut Layout, hopefully it won't make a liar out of me and I'll actually do it. But for some reason, I've never been able to figure out that bug. But if you copy and paste to a new page, it works every time. So there you go. So now you can see what it's done here. And the reason that it's doubled up everything is because the first time it went through, it stopped and it gave us that error message. So that's why we got 2 of everything. But you can kind of see how it works. So what I have done is I've just kind of gotten in the habit of always, before I create a cut layout, I take whatever it is I want to create a cut layout for, copy it to a new page, and then run cut layout. Because I've never been able to figure out why we need to copy it to a new page. But you'll see that, I should point that out too, there's a lot of functions that I have found that if it doesn't work correctly the first time, a lot of times just copying and pasting the design to a new page, like I don't know how it like resets CorelDRAW or what's happening in the process of doing that. But if I see a function that's acting really strange, sometimes rebooting CorelDRAW will do the trick. Or like I said, just copying and pasting the design to a new page and continue working from there, and then it doesn't have any issues. So at any rate, that's how that function works. So that the template layout function can be really useful when you're setting up your alphabets in order to cut on your template. So this blue shape you can see is 15 inches, and then that 1/4 inch margin, left, right, top, and bottom, that's where we're getting that offset margin, and of course the 1/8 inch spacing between letters. All right, so let's get rid of this and this. Let's talk about something else that we really haven't discussed, and we might be able to hit on a question that Velvet had as well. And that is on the stone fill tab. So let's just create a circle. Now in my case, we'll create a specific size circle. So I created a 4-inch circle. Now for those of you who are brand new to CorelDRAW, you want to make sure about this. There's some options here. This is a custom toolbar that we have for CorelDRAW. And in fact, if we go out to the website here, let's do that quick. Let's go to EasyStone. What you want to do to find that custom toolbar, this toolbar will work with any version of CorelDRAW. You would think you would type in toolbar, but actually what you want to do is type in workspace. And there is the workspace. And you see it says it's for X5 or X6. When you actually download this workspace, it'll give you the option for X5 and it'll give you the option for X6, but no option for X7. But just go ahead and install the X6 version for those of you using CorelDRAW X7, and it'll work just fine. There is a video here I wanted to point out on the page. There's a video here that explains how to go about installing the custom workspace. If you're not certain how to go about installing the workspace, there's a video there that explains how to do that. But anyway, let's go back here into CorelDRAW. What I wanted to point out is there's an option here. This third option typically would be checked, and it's called treat as filled. Now, sometimes you don't want to treat as filled, but if you don't know what that means is if you look at the screen, I have a circle. This circle, if I select that circle, you can see down here in the lower right-hand corner where the little paint bucket is, it says there is nothing. And the outline where the little pen is, there is something. So it's telling you what the color is of that outline, but it has no fill. And sometimes that can be useful to have that information. But when you're using treat as filled, even if I click in the middle of my circle, it'll still be selected. If I didn't have that selected and click on the middle of my circle, it's not selected. I would have to click on the edge to actually select the circle. Like I said, sometimes that it can be useful, but just know that you can toggle that on and off. And if you hover over these things, it will actually tell you what this functionality is. Snap to guidelines, snap to objects. This is to go from enhanced mode to wireframe mode, which we do quite often, have to switch between those two, and on and on and on. So anyhow, just understand we have that option there. All right. So what I want to do though here, I want to talk a little bit about the stone fill options, the island fade and stone fade options, and then we have this reverse island fade as well, just to further complicate things. And show you what that actually does, and then hit on something that Velvet asked for as well. If I go about adding some rhinestones to my circle here, I have a 4-inch circle. My rhinestone size is SS10, and if I click AS, in fact, I'm going to change my stone color. So we have all these quick select stone color options, and this one right here is hot pink. And if you look down at the bottom of Easy Stone, as we hover over these different buttons, it actually tells us what the colors are. You can see that there. And like I said, eventually you'll just know that that first blue right there is Cobalt, and then Capri, and then Blue Zircon. And that's kind of the order in which what we've done is kind of set this up in the order in which, you know, the most commonly used colors. So of all the blues, Cobalt's probably the most common. So that's why it's first in that blue category. And then we have hot pink and so on. So at any rate, I'm just going to right click on one of these colored squares. You see here right now it says stone color, but I right click on one of those and now it says hot pink. And so now when we add stones, we're going to add stones and they're going to be hot pink. We use a 0.5 millimeter spacing between our stones. That's not written in stone, so you could use less, you could use more. You know, you just kind of have to play with it with your cutter, how accurate it is. You know, if I know some people use 0.3 of a millimeter. I have a pretty nice cutter. I have a GCC Expert Pro that I absolutely love. I mean, it's absolutely flawless every time. As long as I have the settings set like they should be and my blade is not dull, it is an absolute marvelous cutter. I do love it. It's quick. And like I said, it cuts perfect every time, never have an issue with it. It's about $900 for those of you who may be interested in looking at a cutter, a new cutter, or your first cutter. You absolutely cannot go wrong with that Expert Pro. I mean, I absolutely love it. Can't say enough good things about it. They do make more expensive cutters, and GCC makes a Jaguar and a Puma. But the Expert Pro is a really nice cutter, and they do make an entry-level cutter. GCC does as well, which is the GCC Expert. And the one thing I really love about my Expert Pro over the Expert is the Expert Pro is whisper quiet when it's cutting. I mean, you almost can't even hear it cut. Now, the GCC Expert uses a not a servo motor. I forget what the name of it is now, but the motor that makes the cutter cut is really loud. I mean, really loud. It would absolutely drive me bananas. But the Expert Pro is really whisper quiet, so it's a pretty nice cutter. But at any rate, when we select these stones, you can see we have a bunch of buttons that pop up pink. And the reason that we did that is just to kind of alert you that there's some functionality here because it met a certain condition. So we have stones that are applied to a path. When we select those stones, we get these options. If we zoom in a little bit here, you can see the stone on the path. And so if we hit delete, then what that does is it removes the path, and now all of these stones are individual. They could be modified individually, okay? And in this particular case, we don't want to do that. If you look here at the target button, the reason it's lit up is because we can add stones by left clicking. We can add stones, and then by right clicking, we can get rid of stones, which that can be immensely useful. Sometimes we want just a little bit more stone spacing, or let's see if we can kind of create this here. So if we click on add stones, see how wide the spacing is? Now what we've asked for is a 0.5 millimeter, but this is what we get. And what we're really telling Easy Stone is to apply as many stones as possible, but don't have the spacing less than a 0.5 millimeter. And so what Easy Stone is really saying here is saying, well, if those are the conditions where you really want, then we can't have 5 stones. And so what we wind up with is all these big gaps. So that's why we have this option here with the target button, where if we want to push it and add a fifth stone, we can select the existing stones and say, well, let's go ahead and add one more. And so yes, this stone spacing is less than 1/2 millimeter that we asked for, but I would rather have it tight than have it so loose. So anyhow, that's why that functionality happens. And sometimes we wind up adding too many stones like that, and so we have to back it off. So we just right click until we're happy with the number of stones that we have on the path. So that's what that target button does. And then finally, here on the BS button, that actually stands for break stones. So sometimes we want to, right now these stones and the path are 1, but sometimes we need to break the stones so they're not 1, and yet we still want to have the path. So that's what that means, break stones. Now the stones are not connected to the path, but we still have the path. You remember with delete path, it actually deleted the path. Where here, we're just breaking the stones from the path because we want to use the path for something else. And then lastly, we can right click on break stone. And what that does is that removes all of the stones in their entirety. And then we can add them back in or whatever. And you know, if you had attended previous sessions, you know that there's sometimes we'll apply some stones and then we'll clear them out, we'll modify the path or something, and then add them back in or something. So I mean, there's times where all that functionality is actually quite useful. All right, so now let's talk about our next topic that may or may not be what Velvet's question was about. And here we have SS10 stones, and what I want to do is I want to offset another ring to the outside, but I want that offset to be the next ring out. I want to have SS16 stones. So in order to use the existing path, I first need to break the stones. So we'll break the stones. And now you can see my path is separate from my stones. But we have a neat function here in Easy Stone. Rather than just guessing, how much do I need to offset the existing circle to apply SS16 stones? Well, I don't know. I don't know what that distance is. And we don't want to have to guess, and we don't want to have to eyeball it. So we have a formula here built into Easy Stone that does the process quite simply. So we just click on, we're on our stone fill tab, and we can click on this little button here, this little green button, and that will give us the island fill offset values. And then we can tell Easy Stone exactly what we want to do. We want to go from 10 to 6, 10 to 16, 10 to 20, or 10 to 30. Well, in this case, we want to go from 10 to 16. If we right click on create offset, what that's going to do is going to offset to the outside. And if we just use our left click, it would offset to the inside. So now when we apply, we change our stone size by right clicking SS16 and then apply some stones, the distance between the first row and the second row is exactly 1/2 millimeter. And you can see now there's exactly enough room to have our SS16 stones in place there. And that's obviously what we wanted to do. Now, one thing to point out is there's nothing written in stone about this. In other words, let's just say, for example, I want to do kind of something similar here. I want the next row I want to be 6s, but I don't want them to be right up against the 16s. So what I could do is I could tell Easy Stone, well, I'm currently going 16 to 6. That's really what I want to do, but I'm going to tell it 16 to 20. And I'll create the offset, and then when I add 6s, let's go ahead and add some 6s. You see what I mean here? There's more of a spacing between the 16s and the 6s that way. So, you know, you can kind of use a little bit of trickery there. But getting back to our island fill options, let's drag out another circle here. Let's talk about our island fill options a little bit. Here, the number of islands, let's do 6 for this example. For our island fade, let's use 8. No, let's not use 8 because that will be a lot. Let's use 2 for our island fade. Let's do 8 island fills. And for the stone fade, let's do 8. Now, when I go ahead and choose island fill, again, just like the offset function worked, if we click on island fill, it's going to do it to the inside. And if we right click, it's going to do it to the outside. And we want to right click to the outside for this example. And you can see what it's done. So if we remember the values, let's throw a weed box behind all this. Oops, didn't like that. So let's push this down to the bottom. There we go. So now we can better see what we created here. If we remember the values that we used 8 islands, we did an island fade of 2, and we did a stone fade of 8. All right, and so what that means is the first offset was the standard offset plus 2 millimeters, and then it added an additional 2 millimeters, and so you can see each corresponding row as it goes out, the offset is greater and greater and greater and greater. And that's because it's taking the first offset, adding 2 millimeters, and then adding 2 millimeters to that, and that, and that. And that's why it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. The amount of offset gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you notice the first inner ring has X number of stones, and the next ring is going to have 8 fewer than that one. 8 fewer, 8 fewer, 8 fewer, and that's why you kind of get this kind of strange pattern, if you will, around the circles there. So that's what those options all mean and how they have an effect. Now let's try something different here, just so you can get, and you can use any shape. So we can use, in fact, let's do that. Let's use a heart shape. So we can go over here to our shapes, and let's use a heart, just to give you the same example here. So we'll do the same settings, but this time with a heart shape, and we'll right click, and then we will go ahead and add a weed box. And see, now you can see how pretty that looks when we actually use a shape. And Anne reminded me when I was talking earlier about cutters, something to look for when you're purchasing a cutter for the first time, or maybe you're getting a new cutter, is the difference between a step motor and a servo motor. Now, there's a lot of scuttlebutt that servo motors are more durable than step motors. And while that's probably true, I've owned many a cutters for many years that use stepper motors, and they never failed once. That said, stepper motors are crazy loud. So if your cutter is crazy loud, you probably have a stepper motor. And they also say that servo motors are more accurate. And that's probably true to some extent. Probably the roller system, the feed system of the material on that particular cutter is probably more important. And that's a good point to make too, especially for those of you who are maybe doing rhinestones, maybe down the road are looking into adding sign vinyl and doing vinyl signs and what have you. One thing that you'll notice is with the cheaper cutters, they're suitable, especially considering the monetary investment. $300-400 you can get a nice cheap cutter, but they're not very good beyond, say, 4 foot in length. Once you're trying to do bigger sign graphics for windows or even cars or something like that, if you're cutting things that are longer than 4 foot, the accuracy can suffer greatly beyond that. So you'll see, like I know, like on the GCC Jaguar, I don't know, I think they claim like 50-foot accuracy. I mean, it's crazy. But that's because of the feed system that cutter comes with is kind of high tech and keeps your material in your cutter nice and straight. So anyhow, hadn't touched on the island fill options before, and there's all kinds of weird, crazy patterns that you can make, just kind of monkeying with the different options. And you notice here, the first offset that we did is closest, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. What reverse island fade means is the opposite. So the outside, it just offset in the opposite way. So it starts from the outside, and then as we come in, the fade gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's just this backwards. So it's kind of weird. If we go back to our shape tool here, we'll just try that option once so you kind of have a better understanding of what that option actually does. Let's go down here. So we have about the same size. We'll use the same options here. So we'll do 8 and 2 and 8. But this time we're going to hit reverse. And so now you can see it started out here, and as it comes in, the fade, so it starts this one, and then it comes in, and then the fade gets bigger and bigger to the inside. Like I said, it creates a totally different look. You may like it, you may hate it, but it's some weird, somebody asked for it, so I was like, okay, I'll throw it in there. What the heck? I personally have never used that particular option though, but it's there if you want to use it. So yeah, just looking at a couple questions here. Dax had asked, going back to cutters, Dax had asked about there being an overcut feature. Well, we hear a lot, scuttlebutt, especially when it comes to cut and rhinestone templates, about overcut. And the reality is that really is immaterial, at least from my experience. Now, the software that I use is called K&K Studio. And for those of you who might be interested, I swear you should download this demo. So if we just go to the website and type in K&K, I don't sell this software, but I love it so much, I had to put it on my website. So here it is, K&K Studio Demo. And I did talk with the fine folks over at K&K USA. So if you go to their website, K&K USA, years ago, I had bought a cutter from them. It was called an Eagle, and it came with K&K Studio. And anyhow, this is where you go, and this is a cool little this K&K Zing. I used to have one of these too, but although let's be, all those are accessories. This is the where's it at? So there's your software, but here's their little cutter that they're really pushing now. It's kind of neat. It's a nice tiny little cutter, small package, comes 14-inch wide, will hold 15-inch material, which is kind of a big deal because all of your t-shirt material comes 15 inches, and your template material you can get in 15 inches. So it's kind of cool, but this is kind of nice because it does have Bluetooth connectivity, which is kind of neat. So if you're looking for something small, portable, I bought this cutter because I was doing an event, and I wanted to be able to cut templates Johnny on the spot. And so anyhow, that's why I bought this cutter. And it turns out I didn't do many mobile events, so I wound up selling it sometime later. But mine wasn't the fancy one. Now they've kind of updated the model a little bit, and they had the Bluetooth connectivity, which is, like I said, that's kind of cool, not having to have a cord. But at any rate, my old cutter that I bought from K&K years and years ago came with K&K Studio. And the thing that I really like about K&K Studio, and this is something that we should really consider when you're talking about starting business, looking at cutters, and thinking down the road a piece here. K&K Studio will work with virtually any cutter on the planet, with perhaps the exception of the Silhouette Cameo. For those of you who have a Silhouette Cameo, I'm not knocking it, even though I think there are a lot better cutters out there for basically the same money with a lot fewer limitations. But the point that I like to make, especially when you're starting out brand new, is portability. So if I'm starting out with a Cameo and I'm making a bunch of files, a bunch of cut files, and later I need a bigger cutter, I want to upgrade. Well, how devastated am I going to be knowing that I cannot use Silhouette Studio, which sends the files to the Cameo, to cut? I can't use Silhouette Studio with my new cutter. So here I've spent a year and a half growing my business, and I have all these cut files ready to go for my little Cameo. And now if I want to use those same cut files, those same designs with my new cutter, I got to start the process all over again. And that's what I really hate about, and it's really not, it's just a limitation of those craft cutters, So the advantage with K&K Studio is if I go to Sign Warehouse, let me just show you. I always tell people this. No one ever listens to me though, hardly ever. Krista, I'm thinking of you. But anyhow, Sign Warehouse has a cutter that I really like. I don't even think it's on their website, but we'll find out. But if you call them and you ask them about their R19, doesn't look like, well, yes, it does have it here. This is the bundle package, but I really love this cutter. I mean, I absolutely love it. If you're starting out in business, I love this little cutter. Now you can call them and ask them if they have the R19. Now this says currently out of stock for this bundle. We're not really talking about the bundle. I'm just talking about the cutter itself. But it's a 19-inch cutter, so it's a small cutter, but it does pretty well. The software that it comes with, which is LXI software, is just okay. But if you pair it with K&K Studio, K&K Studio can cut to any cutter. So GraphTech, I mean, you name it, they'll go down the whole list of all the different cutters out there on the planet. K&K Studio can work with anything except maybe the Cameo. And that's what I really like. So I could start out this cutter when I bought this years ago. This is the very first cutter I ever started with, was a 19-inch model. They had a 24-inch model, but now I think they only have the 19 and 31-inch models. But at any rate, I really love this cutter because it was the same price as a Cameo, and the software it came with was okay, the LXI software, but I could also use K&K Studio with it. And once I used K&K Studio software with it, I really fell in love with the little cutter, and it was nice for doing portable events. And I just sold the last one I had not that long ago. But at any rate, if you're looking for a new cutter, that might be a good first step. Ask them if they still have these R19s, because it's a nice small cutter, but it does a really good job. It does have a stepper motor in it, so it's crazy loud when it cuts, but it does actually do a pretty decent job cutting. For what we need, for rhinestone templates, for t-shirt, vinyl, and whatnot, it'll do a pretty good job for you. So any rate, that's just something to consider if you're looking for a cutter. But that K&K Studio software, the thing that I like about K&K Studio, I should point this out too, is, when we're doing this for business purposes, time is money. Time is absolutely money. So if I want to cut this design, if I'm so I've created the design here in CorelDRAW, and basically with pretty much any software package out there, any vinyl cutter, if I'm using a GCC cutter, there's actually a macro that you can install in CorelDRAW, a little button I can push up here, and it will take it from here into the GCC software to send to my cutter. But most of the time we have to export some type of file and then import that file into our cutting software to actually send to the cutter to cut. Well, with K&K Studio, I can just copy and paste right here from CorelDRAW right into K&K Studio and just hit the cut button and cut. I don't have to worry about where the design is on my virtual mat on screen, because there is no virtual mat in K&K Studio. You just copy, paste, cut, and it will automatically put the design in the position it needs to on the material. Now we can override it once we get into the cut window. I don't have K&K Studio on this laptop because I don't use this laptop for cutting. Otherwise, I'd show you. But I just love the simplicity of the software, how easy it is to work. It's the most simple software for cutting. It's absolutely flawless for cutting. Going back to Dax's question in regards to overcut, there's one really neat feature I love about K&K Studio, especially cutting for cutting templates, and that is the option of doing a double cut. So when I'm cutting glitter or when I'm cutting template material, I always do a multi-pass. And you have to be kind of careful with your Rhinestone software. So a lot of cutting software has the ability to do a multi-cut, but you have to be careful about how it's actually going about that cut. In K&K Studio, when we tell it to double cut, it literally drops the knife, it goes around the shape twice, and then picks up the knife. A lot of your cutting software, if we tell it to double cut, sometimes what it'll do is it'll cut the whole pattern, come back to the beginning, and cut the whole pattern right on top of itself, which obviously could be prone to problems, especially if your cutter is not 100% accurate. Or what it would do is actually drop the knife, do one rotation, pick up the knife, drop the knife again, and do a second one. So obviously that's kind of defeating the purpose. The whole purpose of an overcut feature is to slightly go past its beginning point so that it makes a nice clean cut. Well, there's actually a function in EasyStone. As long as we're here talking about it, I can show it to you. If you're cutting software, and Krista, if you're still with me, I guess she is. If you're cutting, you may find this useful. For those of you who are working with a cutting software that doesn't have a double cut feature in it, like I described that K&K Studio does, EasyStone actually has a function in here. I'll show it to you, and I'll explain exactly what it does here. So let's just take, I don't know, let's just take half of these stones and let's give them a different color. I just want to show you what we can do here. So we'll just make half of it pink and half of it crystal. Now, I should preface this by saying you would not need, if you really wanted to create a design like this, you would not need to create two templates. You would just cut one template, cover half of it up with a piece of hotfix tape, brush in all the stones to the left, then take off the hotfix tape and brush in all the different color on the right. But anyhow, what I want to show you here is this option here. We'll go under the miscellaneous tab, and we are going to export the vector file. We have two colors. This is one thing that's really, really special about EasyStone, and I can't stress this enough, just how special this is. And by special, I mean it's going to save you a bundle of money, an absolute truckload of money over time. So going back over here to our YouTube channel, I want to point out this video for you. For those of you who are new, need to learn all you can, type in this, template output. There is an option, let's see here, I am in the wrong account, first of all. Let's go back over here to the right one.
In this video, we're going to be taking a look at creating another text design, but we're going to be doing it in two different...
There we go. All right, this first one here, it talks about this ice cream design. Now, in this design, we have 3 different colors of ice cream, and then we have a cone. So that's 4. And then we have the black outline, which is 5. So in theory, we would want to create 5 templates, right? 1 template for every single color. Well, that would be absolutely craziness because it's just not really required to do that. So really what we would want to do is when we work with any design, we want to think about in that design process how we're actually going to go about creating the template, creating the transfer for that given design. And from that, hold on just a moment. All right. So what we want to do for this design is we want to be able to create this design in the fewest number of templates possible. And EasyStone is really the only software that I've ever seen that has this type of functionality. We can specify exactly how we want to create these templates. Just going kind of building on this, so definitely watch this template output video. I know we've covered the template output a little bit in previous sessions, but really understand and watch this video, and because it'll really give you a good understanding of how you can create this quote unquote complicated design, but do so only using 2 templates. So this design would only require 2 templates. And even though you have lots of different colors and stone sizes on a single template, it's actually quite easy to do with just 2 templates rather than a whole bunch. But there's another thing here on our playlists. Here are all the videos to the master classes that we've had up to this point. You can see there's currently 10 different videos, over 20 hours of instruction on EasyStone 4. Because we missed 5 and 12. That's why there's not 12, but there's 10 videos there. And then also right down here, creating rhinestone transfers. There's just 3 or 4 videos. I guess there's 4 videos. And we talk about doing 3 color designs with just 2 templates and different options that you have available. The plug technique, which I was talking about, where you cover up a portion of the design with a piece of hotfix tape and fill it all in, and then pull the hotfix tape and fill in all the ones that you didn't fill in previously. So there's a few videos there that are really worth watching, the creating rhinestone transfers there. All right, so anyhow, let's go back to what I was talking about over here. So there's some options here, but we are going to I guess we'll export crystal and hot pink. And what I wanted to show you is the create 2-cut template option. So we're going to use that option. So we're going to export just to CorelDRAW. So we don't have to worry about that. And then we'll go ahead and choose export files here. And see, it says 2-cut template in progress. And what that does is it creates this. This is what the end result is. So when we choose the 2-cut option, which I would recommend you do if your software doesn't offer a 2-cut option built into it, EasyStone can create a special file for you. But let me show you what this file is all about. So we'll ungroup, and I want to just look at one stone here to show you a little bit what's really happening here. Do you see these 2 nodes? When we select it, there's one there and one there, okay? I want to kind of dissect this circle so you understand what's happening. This is a special function here in EasyStone where what we can actually do here, my mouse will cooperate with me. We'll switch over to our shape tool here, and if we look at what's really happening here, there is a circle. It's a spiral. So I'm just moving. So you see what's happened here? So when it cuts, it begins right here, and it cuts, and it goes around and around a second time. If it stopped right here, that would be the same start point. So what it does is it keeps going. That's kind of what overcut does. So that's what these special circles are all about. So there's actually 1, 2 1/4 rotations with all these, with that 2-cut template. So all these circles are built the exact same way. So if we peel it apart again, this is where the blade starts, and it goes around and around and around and around. And then that's how we get nice, clean cut templates when you're cutting with your rhinestone templates. And so, Krista, what you found on your machine the other day is you had to jack your machine up all the way to 600 pressure in order to get the template to cut right. Now, one thing that you could do without jacking up your machine to maximum pressure that might help with the cutting is have your blade out a little bit farther. Then you probably would have a need to use a little bit less pressure. but for sure you could use significantly less pressure if you did the 2-cut template option. So anyhow, that's just something kind of keep in mind, you know, when you're doing your cutting. There's a lot of little moving parts and pieces to learn in this whole process, but once you get it, it's actually pretty simple. It's just, there's just a lot to learn. All right, so hopefully that was some good information. I do want to get to at least one design here, and I do have a real cute little Santa I want to make. But let's see here. We had a question about the Smart Fill function, and Smart Fill is, let's see here. Let me see if I can find us a good project. Aha, here's a good project. All right, so this came up the other day. And and this is a design that I created the other day because somebody asked for it. And we're going to create this little cross design, not all of it, but just a piece of it, just so you can kind of see my whole thought process when I go into creating a design like this. So I did create the whole design already. In fact, if we go out to the EasyStone website, it gives me a chance to kind of promote something here on the EasyStone website. So on the EasyStone website, we have this thing called Design of the Day. And click on Design of the Day, and it will show you all the different various designs that we've done. And there is the cross that I did, okay, the other day. And I have this same cross, but with a rhinestone version as well. And then we have a font that we did. So all these designs, people who are members get to download all these designs for free. They pay $25 a month, so it's not exactly free, but there's no additional fee to download the designs that we post. And so here's a Santa that we did in a previous session. Showed you how to do that Santa, and this was done in a previous session as well, the little necklace design. And you see, we also allow people to post a custom design request. So if you have a specific need, so like here's basketball mom. Well, somebody said, well, hey, I need that same exact design, but with a football and a soccer ball and a tennis ball or whatever, you know. So anything specific that you want us to create a design for, as long as it's generic and it'll appeal to the masses, then we can create that design for you rather than you having to take time out of your day to create it yourself, or perhaps you don't have the skill level required to, or maybe you don't even have the rhinestone software for that matter. So we can create the design for you at no additional cost as part of your membership, because we're going to have to create a design for that particular day anyhow. So anyhow, this was one design that was specifically requested, so we went ahead and created it. Now we may create it in a way that's not exactly how you want, but at least we have a version of it. In this case, I used a whole bunch of colors and a whole bunch of stone sizes. So, but you know, it's obviously, you know, it's eye-catching. It's definitely, it looks a lot nicer than if we had just used one stone size or one color for that matter. But at any rate, with the design of the day, you get all these new designs that we post. You also get, when you order rhinestones from us, when you order SS10 stones, you get the matching SS6 stones for free. So you see that's right here. It says DoD match that you have to enter in when you check out. And so what that means is if you order 50 gross of crystal in SS10, you'll automatically get 50 gross of crystal in SS6. And of course, the reason that happens is because most of our designs require 2 different stone sizes. So you buy one, you get the other size for free. All right, so that's kind of a nice advantage. And also free shipping, as long as your order is over $50, you get free shipping as well. So enough about the design of the day, but if you want to subscribe, you can just by clicking that button right there. You hit the subscribe button. You can cancel anytime. So if you want to try it out for a month, then you can download all the designs that we currently have, and then all the designs that we have 30 days going forward. And yeah, that's the design of the day. But Anyhow, let's get back to our cross here. So the first thing about this cross is, first of all, it's symmetrical. So we don't want to create the entire cross. We just want to create half of it. And there's different parts of this cross that are symmetrical as well. And we'll kind of hit that as we go along. But I'm going to do this kind of quickly. But if we go to our 3-point curve tool, I'm just using this as a guide. So I hit that first point, the second point, and then the third point, and I've created that first line. Okay, and we'll just kind of zoom in here and keep going here. First point, second point, third point, first point, second point, third point. So you see that black line that's being created? Well, so we'll come up here and do the same thing. First point, second point, third point. That's why it's called the 3-point curve, because we have 3 points. And I'm going to stop right there. Now, what I want to do here right now, let me just pull this out so you can see what we have. This is what we have currently. All right. And what I really want to do is this portion of the design, I actually want to bust it away from the bottom. And so we have a function in EasyStone that does it. Let me show you how you do it in CorelDRAW first. We double click on our line, and this node right here, we click on that node where we want to break it, and we would right click and choose break apart. And so now it's not quite broken apart. We actually have to select the whole line. We've broken the node, but now we need to break the line as well. And now we have 2 pieces. Good Lord. All that clicking around just for that. So what we really want to do here is we want to use EasyStone because it's just quicker, easier. So we'll double click on our line. We'll select the node in question. And when we click on ban, it breaks the node and the path, and it recolors the path. You can see one piece is recolored green to indicate to us that it really did what we needed it to do, which is break these 2 paths into 2 separate parts. And then I'm just going to flip this vertically because I wanted that to be symmetrical. I wanted the top to be the same as the bottom. Even though it actually wasn't in the original design, that's how I wanted it to be in this one. So let me go ahead and delete this part and just bring, remember I said I was just using this as a bit of a guide. So we'll bring that over like so. And so you can see I've kind of gone away from the original artwork, but that's okay. And then I do want the top to be symmetrical with the bottom, but differently. So in other words, I want this portion at the very top to be the same, but obviously I'm just going to double click on this path. I want this right here to match up with that end. So I'm just going to double click to create a node and then move it to the end. And then what I can do now, of course, is I can delete anything that's at the bottom of this. So I have to find, there's the bottom of it. So if I just double click on that node, that will get rid of it. Let's go back to our regular mode, and now we should be able to see this a little bit more clearly if we bring this over. So now I can mirror this. And the way I'm mirroring it is by holding my control key and then right-clicking to make a duplicate. So let me explain that one more time. So we're gonna select it. Here's our control handle, pull it over. You see here it's all distorted, but if we hold our control key down, now it doesn't become distorted. And then to make a duplicate, we right-click, and now we have a duplicate. So there's 2 options for us at this point. A lot of times, what I want, the whole purpose of creating this is I want a solid object that I can, as one solid object. So one option to create a solid object would be to select everything and right-click on ban. Remember, ban is short for break it nodes. Well, right-clicking ban is actually combining it all into one. When we combine it all into one, we can actually give it a fill. I'm going to back up where it's not combined. I'm going to select everything and give it a fill color. We're going to give it this kind of violet purple color. Now you can see that nothing happened. We gave it a fill color, but nothing's happened. And the reason nothing happened was because these are all open paths. So it can't hold anything if it's got a hole at the bottom of it. That's basically what it's saying here. But if we take all these individual paths, you can see here there's 8 of them. It says it right here at the bottom of CorelDRAW. If we right click on ban, then EasyStone will bring them all together, and lo and behold, look at there. We now have a filled object of light violet, okay? And you can see also that we just have a single object now. It says curve on layer 1. It doesn't say multiple objects. But there's also a function, and I want to explain how we would use this function here so you have a good understanding. But there's also a function called the Smart Fill tool, which allows us to take this little paint bucket. This is your Smart Fill tool. And anywhere there's a closed region, we can click and it will fill that almost like a coloring book. So see there? So now we basically did the same thing. So we created a new shape with that, and because of the way we drew all of these lines, it was able to fill it. Now, if we deliberately did not have part of it connected, so see that's not connected. If we use our Smart Fill tool now, look what happened. We get something really strange. It filled this over here. So I click, and you can see what it did. And the reason it did it is because it didn't find a closed area over here where we clicked. So it said, oh, I'll just fill in the areas that are closed. And so what it found was the original bitmap. It was a closed shape. And of course, the closed shape of our cross, it just assumed that that's what we wanted to fill, when of course, that wasn't what we wanted to fill at all. But anyhow, that's the logic and thinking when we're using that Smart Fill tool. So let's take a look at just a little bit, and I'm going to do this very, very quickly and very ragged, but hopefully you can get a kind of an understanding of where that Smart Fill tool might become useful. So if we look at this design, it's more or less symmetrical. You can see here, we got a curve over here, we got a curve over here, we got this curve here and this curve here. It's more or less symmetrical. So again, I'm only going to do half of it, and then I'll show you what we're going to do here. So let's just do this real quickly. I'm just going to use my 3-point curve tool, and so I'm going to start here on the right. So see, I'm just kind of following these lines around back to center. Okay, and in fact, if I give that a color, we can probably see that more clearly. So there we go. I've given it pink. Okay, so now I need to go to the inside, and we'll create that. And like I said, I'm not really paying too much attention to what I'm doing. So I've done that piece, and now I want to keep going here. So I have this piece over here. We'll add that, and then we'll come back in and we'll add this. And we'll keep going here. We'll add this. And I do a lot of vector conversions, so I can go pretty quickly. So I just want to show you how problematic it comes into play here. It's not really problematic. It's just you utilize all these different tools to create whatever it is we need to create here. And I'll go ahead and post this design, even though I've already done it. I'll post this design where you can download it as a little freebie for you. But let's just see here. Let's just keep going, I guess. And what I did here, as I was finishing this up, the part that I couldn't see, there's a little piece here that I could not see. I just kind of guessed on. So this piece right here that looks like it's like underneath, I just guessed on. So I'm just going to create a couple of lines to represent that piece. and come back to the middle here. And then we're just going to keep going here. We're going to start from the middle. And of course, we can, once we've kind of taken it up to a certain, once we've taken it to a certain point, then we can always go back in and fine tune it as well. So it, you know, a lot of times when you first starting out, it may look like an absolute mess, but you can always go back and edit it. All right. So basically, we more or less have done half of this thing, and I'm just going to kind of pull it away here. We are going to flip it for the other half and bring those two back together. And so this is what we're left with. And like I said, right now it looks like a bit of a jumbled mess. But if we go in with our Smart Fill tool, if we've done everything right, when we click on these areas, you can see we can click on all these different areas, and they're all solid filled areas. So we'll go there. Won't let us fill those two areas. So there it's not solid filled because it, when we use the Smart Fill tool, it kind of acted a little weird. All right, so now you can see we have all of the vector pieces. What we need to do is all those red pieces, we need to pick them all up. So we'll just select one red piece, select the whole design and hit select, and we're going to pull away all of the red from our pink outlines. And now we can weld this all together. If we go into wireframe mode, see how we have all this crisscrossing and zigzagging? Well, if we weld it all together, most of it goes away. There's a little problem down here, and there's a little problem up here, and I'm not exactly sure why that is. So to fix that, what we can do is where these two are overhanging, let's see if that will fix those two things. And let's do the same thing down here. Let's double click. You see here, if we just bring that in and bring this in, let's see if it fixes that issue where it wasn't welding properly at those two locations. And it didn't seem to do that. It didn't seem to help in either case. So let's back up and figure out why this is happening. So first of all, I think I see it, is probably the center diamond piece. Let's try that. The center diamond piece might be hanging things up. So we'll make sure this is overhanging a little bit and try and weld just those two pieces together. So that took care of that. And that's what sometimes we have to do. We have to just kind of do it step by step. We'll weld those two pieces. Now that's all cleared up. Now let's see what's happening down here. Probably the same thing. So we're just going to click and make this diamond piece a little bit bigger. Just so those where the two shapes were touching one another, as long as they overlap a little bit, then generally that will take care of the problem. So you can see now it's all basically welding up like it's supposed to. There we go. So now you don't have that, but we have the same thing happening here. So where these two shapes are overlapping one another, we'll do the same thing. Weld it up. And weld it. There we go. So now all the way down the middle here, there's no overlaps, there's no extra lines. I do see an extra line right here, but that we should be able to weld, which we did. See, that welded just fine. And where these two are intersecting, that should weld just fine there. It's just those the very center points that didn't want to weld up quite right. So that Smart Fill tool has some useful functionality, of course, not so much in rhinestone design necessarily, but you know, when we're doing vinyl and what have you, then it did. Angela asked about the playlist and for the masterclass, and you do have to be logged into your YouTube account. If you're not actually logged into your YouTube account, if you've registered for the classes, it should let you see all of the videos in that playlist because you've been added. But if for some reason you're not able to, I don't know if you have more than one YouTube account, but we want to make sure that we have the proper, we need your email address that you use for your YouTube account. And then we can get you added if you're not already. All right, shall we work on a design, an actual design that I think you guys will like? Not only to see how I would do it, but also you would like the finished design. It's a cute one. Let me find it. I got so many, but here he is. Jolly old Saint Nick. But I think what I want to do with this one, I think I might make this in 2 versions. Let's make a kid version, and then we'll make an adult version. And I don't remember what the saying was, but I just saw a sweatshirt today. I'll have to look it up again. But it had a Santa Claus on it like this, and it was just a super cute shirt. Let's see, first of all, as long as we're talking about CorelDRAW, let's take a look at making this into a vector file. Sometimes designs like this will convert okay, and sometimes maybe not. Let's see if this is one of them. So we have Santa here, and we're going to choose Trace Bitmap. We'll go to Outline Trace, and I usually use this option, Low Quality Image. And this is what we get. And it's thinking about it. And so what it's doing here is it's showing you the original version, and then it's showing you the now converted version. Now, if we look at this closely, you see the detail in the eyebrow on the original compared to the detail on the eyebrow on the converted. And it's not too bad. See these little tiny white dots over here on the left? Those aren't quite showing over here. But otherwise, it actually converted, in this particular case, it converted shockingly well. We can bump up the detail. So if we want to see if we can bring some of that detail back, see now those little white dots right there are present. So we could bump up the detail if we want to. Something that you want to kind of keep in mind when you're doing this node conversion is look at here, the number of nodes. When we started with less detail, see we had 1,400 nodes, and now we have 5 bazillion. So we have almost double the number of nodes. See here? So now we have, or quadruple, I guess. We have bunches of nodes. And bunches of nodes, what that means is your cutter is going to work very hard to produce, because every single node in your design, your cutter is going to stop and think and turn and twist at every single node in your design. So the fewer the nodes, the quicker your cut, the better your cut. If we were to cut this just as is with 4,200 nodes, you might have one heck of a mess on your hands. And then, of course, the other thing, too, you have to think about is these tiny little specks on the eyebrows. Well, you're not going to really want to have to go back and weed those anyhow. So we can bring back the detail a little bit to a more suitable range to where we're happy with it. And the less detail that we bring in, the fewer the nodes. You can see that there. Fewer the nodes. So once we're happy with it, there's a couple of areas where the white is being left. I'm not quite sure why it does that, but there is a function right here. It says remove color from the entire image. So we'll go ahead and do that. And now you can see all of the white has been dropped out, and we're left with just jolly old Saint Nick here. So we'll go ahead and choose OK. And then that will give us a vector version of Santa Claus. There he is, vector version of Santa, right there. Now from here, what we probably would want to do is we probably would want to, let's see here, I think, yep, that's the one. Not sure what's happening here. Let's go into Object Manager. Something's strange. Oh, it's a group. It's like, what's going on here? This is a group. That's what the problem is. So we have a group, a bunch of individual. Let's look at wireframe mode and see what we actually have. So we have a bunch of individual images or different things. So these little specks right here, we can go in and clean up those nodes because we're not actually going to do that. And then there's a little speck right here that we're not actually going to cut. We don't want to have to cut. So we can kind of go through enhanced mode here and just double check any, see this little dot? We don't need that little dot, but we also don't need this little white area because we're not going to weed that out right there at the nose. So, it's just like this little part here in his mouth. We've got a little dot and we've got this little area right here and here and here. So we're just deleting those nodes so we don't have that little spot there on his chin. And so on through the whole design, but it's kind of a cute little design. So I'll post that little Santa Claus for you as well. And here, like this little weird anomaly here, we could fix it. So we could delete some of these nodes. We can right click and make that a line. See there? And now we don't have that weird little shape happening there. So if you want to cut this out and put it on a shirt, now you'll be able to. See that little spot right there? It's going to cut that. So we want to make sure it doesn't cut that by deleting that little blank area there. And I'll go through and clean up the design a little bit better for you. So we have a nice vector version of it. See that little blip right there? We can just double click on it, delete. Whoops. So when we're deleting all of these, let's put one on either side. So we added two, and we're going to delete what's in the middle. And by doing that, it kind of keeps its shape. These should be cusps. So we'll select that node and make it a cusp. Make it a cusp. And then we'll take what's here in the middle and make it a line. It makes a straight line. And then we'll take that straight line and make it a curve. And that way we can just kind of bend it up a little bit. And now we don't have that weird shape right there on the little curls. So you can go through and kind of clean it all up, but I'll do that for you. And like I said, I'll post it. So if you want to cut out a vector version of it, you'll be able to. But let's talk back here about this is the bitmap version of the design. And what I want to do is I want to kind of walk you through the process of converting this into a rhinestone design, because I think once you actually get in and practice it and try it, you'll see it's actually quite simple to do. And if you take this design that's pretty simple one and think about any other design that you do, is basically the exact same process. So first things first, we need to size up Santa, the proper size. And so to do that, we're going on the specialty tab and we hit set size and select the very top and the very bottom. And for this one, I think I'm going to make it 6.5 inches tall. I do want to measure how wide it is as well. So now I have nothing selected, and I can measure the width. And you can see it's 6.5 inches. Well, that might be too wide. So I'm going to select it because what I want to do is make a use size. So we'll go back to set size and we'll set the width to be no wider than 5 inches. I don't know really, there's no specific size that it needs to be, but I have young children, so they're tiny. So anyhow, I'll make it this big. But that would probably be a good thing to do, if you're making it for a specific shirt, to measure how big it needs to be before we actually go in and start making it. Let's go ahead and lock the image down. Now, the next consideration, of course, is what type of rhinestones we want to use. Well, in this design, we're going to use 6s and 10s only. So first thing I want to do is let's go ahead and drop down a 6 and a 10 and think about what this design being red, what might stand out on top of it. And let's do a light green. We're going to change it later. We can change it to whatever we want. But for right now, let's just drop. I'm going to right click and drop a 10 and a 6. and hit the escape key. Now notice that when I right click on AS, that takes me into drop stone. Everywhere I click, it drops a stone. If I hit the escape key, it's no longer pink. That means we're out of that function. Now what's nice about having a 6 and a 10 here is now we can see physically how big the SS10 and SS6 rhinestone is in compared to our artwork. And just by looking at that, we now will be able to determine, well, what areas we're definitely going to be using 10s in and what areas we definitely need to think about using 6s. So for example, if we take just this corner of his face right here, well, obviously 10 is a little overdoing it. So that only leaves us the option of 6s. So we'll go ahead and put some 6s down. Now the way I'm doing those 6s is I'm selecting one, space bar on my keyboard, and I can make all the duplicates I want. But depending on how good you are, I could see I've spaced them pretty close to accurate. But if you're not very close to accurate, we can select those stones and right click on D to respace them so they're perfectly even. So in other words, if I had done something like this, they're not quite even, I select them all but one. I hold my shift key down and select that last one, which is the start point, and then when I respace, see how they all get respaced, so now they're perfectly spaced apart. Okay, now you could be happy with that. What I'm actually going to do is anytime I'm using artwork, I'm only using it as a guide. So I would prefer that those stones be slightly closer together. So what I did is you can see right here, I'm not right at the corner like the original artwork was. I don't think it's really that critically important either. So you can see here on the hat, it starts out thin and then it gets a little bit thicker. And so I think I'll do that. I think I'll do some 6s and then I'll go up to some 10s. 10. And again, when we're doing this, when we're setting these stones, you don't have to be concerned with getting it perfectly right. See how they're overlapped and all that monkey business? It doesn't really matter because we can always come back in and select those stones, right click on D, and respace them so then they're perfect. You're going to respace them anyhow, so because you want them, basically as perfect as you can get them. Let's do the eyebrows. So I'm going to use a combination of 10s and 6s. There's no right or wrong here. You can't hardly mess this up. That's what's nice. So it's just wherever you see a blob, you just decide, is that blob going to be a 6 or is it going to be a 10? And in my cases, they're going to be mostly 6s for this eyebrow. And then I'm going to move over here and we'll use, and all I'm doing is dragging that stone, holding my left mouse button and dragging, and then right clicking to make a duplicate. See, no software is going to take over our mind and place a stone every single place that, our design, our eye tells us to put one. So having that ability just to move a stone and right click and make a duplicate and all those little shortcuts that we have available to us, it just makes it so easy. And now we have these eyebrows looking exactly the way my mind sees it. Now, what you'll find is a lot of times, we'll go through this whole process and do it. And then when we actually peel it away from the artwork and look at it by itself, we may hate it. But this is just a starting point, basically. All right, so you see this little swoosh between the eyes here. It starts out thick and gets thinner. Now, again, it's up to you, the designer, to determine, how literal we want to be with this. I don't think, I wouldn't mind trying some 10s up to a certain point and then trying some 6s. I don't know how that will look. I don't know if it's necessary, but you can see what I've done here. I've just kind of splatted them across there. Again, you can move one at a time and right click and make a duplicate, right click and make a duplicate, or we can use our space bar. So let's undo those again to show you. So here I'm space bar, space bar, space bar, space bar. Switch it to a 6 and space bar, space bar. Don't worry if they overlap because who cares? Now, if you're using CorelDRAW X6 or above, you have the freehand pick tool, which we can then come in here and select all these stones. We're going to add to this selection, this one right here to the far left. We're going to right click on D, and you can see now all of those stones are perfectly spaced apart. Now this one is touching a little bit, so you can see that those two were touching a little bit. And that becomes the space between the eyebrows. Okay, so now that we use 10s over here we also want to use 10s. So again, space bar, space bar, space bar, space bar. We'll try and replicate these little curls in the hair. So you see that's what those are, little curls. And sometimes those real fine details are really tough to get right when you're trying to do it in rhinestones. You know, all these little marks, you know, little wrinkles around his eyes and things, those all could be really tough to get just right. But, you know, we're gonna do the best that we can. So all I'm doing here is just space bar, space bar, space, everywhere I think it needs a stone to represent that little detail in his design. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go through the whole face here, all the curls, and get all that in place. So just keep going here on this side. I hope it looks good when we pull it away. Otherwise, we'll have to fix it. And I've done a lot of designs, and I had to go back and rethink the way I did everything just because I didn't like it, after it was all said and done. I just didn't like it. So we'll do the little eyebrow. We got to have eyebrows. Got to make sure that detail is definitely in there. Now the little squinty eye, that's going to be tough. It's a tiny little detail to get it right, to make it look right. And I think I won't do that one. And let's try and get that over here too. His nose. So we'll do one big one. And the rest will have to be little ones. Because we're working in a very confined space. We can probably do a little bit of a bridge here on his nose. This line here I don't think is really that important to the design, so we won't do that. The little rosy cheeks here, we'll try and do some 10s there, and then we'll do some 6s. Again, I'm just space barring these all along there. Don't worry about your spacing too much, because when you're happy, we can come in here and select all of these stones and respace them. So now all these going all the way around are perfectly spaced. They're all even. We'll do this. So we'll do a big one, and then we'll do this one here. I want to do a 10. And then a couple of 6s. And here we'll do a 6. I guess we'll try and do one to the inside. So you can kind of see what it's starting to look like. Like I said, don't worry too much if you're not perfectly happy with how it looks right now. Finish the design and we'll come back, and then we'll see, once we have the design pulled away from the artwork, what did we actually really create. Now another thing that we can do too, and might as well talk about as long as we're here, this curve going along here, we can set one stone at the front, and at the end select the two by selecting one, holding your shift key and selecting the other, and then shift AS, and that'll fill everything in between. And then we can just bend that path, and now with the path bent, we have more room for stones. So we'll go ahead and add a stone using that target button that we talked about earlier. Adding a stone to what we were working on there. So now this stone kind of looks in the way. So I'm just going to get rid of that one. so we can better put in the little cheek area here. And again, there's really no right or wrong, so that's how I'm going to try it, just like that, and then we'll see what it looks like when we pull it away from the artwork. This is going to be 10s along here up to a certain point, and then we'll switch to 6s for the tip. This will be a 10, and then we'll switch to 6s. We need to sort all those stones out and make sure they're all perfectly spaced. Right-click on D to do that. Now, when we're respacing, something to keep in mind here, when we're respacing, we have to tell EasyStone where to begin the respacing process. So when we make a selection, right now I have all of these stones in yellow selected, okay? So I have to tell EasyStone where to begin the respacing, and to do that, EasyStone will use the last selected stone. Well, when we make a selection using our freehand pick tool, we don't know which one of these stones was the last selected stone. So to tell EasyStone which the last selected stone was, we can hold our shift key down and unselect the end stone. You can see it's no longer in the selection, and then hold my shift key down and reselect it. Now that was the last one that I selected, so when I right click on D, it will respace starting from the top all the way down, and now all those are perfectly spaced, which of course is what we were after. All right, so let's finish up the mouth area here. And then once we get to this point, now this may or may not fit very good. So you can see there, I felt that 2 6s filled that area better than 1 10. So those are always considerations that you have to make when you're designing. Same thing here. And I don't worry about if there's a little bit of an overlap either, especially if it's just in one small area. When we go to cut our template, it won't make that big a difference there. I'd rather have a little bit of overlap than have like a big gap or something, because, you know, well, you can see this stone is touching. So if we got rid of that stone because we don't have room for it, and, you know, what are you going to do? You got to give somewhere. So I'd rather have just a little bit of overlap than have a big gaping hole. So sometimes there's a little give and take. All right, so we just have this portion, and then I think we've got enough of the face where we can pull it away and then take a good look and see if this is going in the right direction or not. So let's finish up this little line detail in the face. So you can see there's nothing rocket science about this. You know, you've got your source artwork, and we're just kind of, in this case, we're just kind of placing stones manually. So now we're up to that point there. So now let's go ahead and pull this away of what we've got done so far. Pull it away. Let's change the color to red, being how that's what the original was. And then just take a look, and all I did was just click on my light cyan. And if we take a look at what we've created so far, I think it's actually looking pretty cute. It actually looks a little bit better if we do it on a light background. If you step back from it a little ways, you can see, I think once we get all of the rest of the elements in place, you know, obviously you're going to be able to tell that that's Santa Claus. Now this little mole here on his nose, you know, you might want to take that away, and because it makes his nose look a little bit cuter than that one single stone almost kind of look like a mole. But you can see, I think he's looking pretty cute. I think it'll work out okay. The other thing too that we might consider is the eye right there that we're trying to represent. Sometimes, you know, take a look at that and see what we're doing is we're just making that an SS16. Does that And I actually think that does actually look better. Look at how much more his eyes pop because those are 16. So I think that will look better doing that in SS16s. But those are some of the things that you think about after the fact. Take a step back, look at the design. What part of this do we need to change? The curls over here on the right hand side, they're definitely less distinctive in the original design. It's tough to tell right now. Is that going to be a distraction? Do we need to adjust those a little bit? My guess is they'll probably be okay just the way they are. But these are all different considerations we can make, a little bit further down the line. So let's just keep going here. So we're definitely on the right path for sure. So sometimes I look at the thing and say, well, what's going to be the next easiest thing to do? And I think the beard elements will probably be the next easiest thing to do. And for those, and again, this is just the designer in me. You ultimately have to decide how you want your design to look like, but I've done enough of these to have an idea of what I'm going to do. And what I'm going to do here on the lower side on the left-hand side here on the lower part, I'm going to try and do all that in 10s. And then as I come up over on this side, I'm going to do that in 6s. So let me show you what we're going to do here. We're going to just take a 6 and do it one at the beginning and at the end at those two corner points. Select those two and Shift AS. That gives us a path of stones that we can then modify. And then remember the target button, we can take away or add to an additional stone. And then we'll do the next section. Same exact way. So we Shift AS, we get the path, we'll bend it. If we click on the end, we can grab our control handles and really fine tune that path, how exactly we want. And again, we can try it by adding a stone, say, well, that spacing, it's kind of wide. And yes, that works. So we can add a stone and keep moving. So here, we'll do something a little bit different. We'll just use that spacebar technique and put that little row of stones in. Again, we don't have very much stones to play with here, so we'll just hand place those, if you will, by using that spacebar technique. And then we'll go up and get that little detail in. Move back down. Come up with this little detail. Now, this is where I'm going to switch over. And again, this is just me. I feel like I need to do something different. So we're going to switch over to 10s. And then, so all of this part of the beard has all been done in 6s. And now we're switching to 10s. So from start to finish, Shift AS, we'll bend those a little bit too tight. So we'll right click on our target, get rid of one. Keep going from stem to stern. Okay, we need to add, so a couple and delete. And we'll keep going. We need to take away, right click on our target and keep going. We'll delete those. All right, so now what I'll do is I'll come back in and all these little details I think I'm going to do in 6s. So, but these I'll just kind of plop in by hand here. I think I'll do one extra one there. And here I'll do those in 6s too. And then up here, we'll do that in 6s. And here we'll do this little line in 6s. And here I'm just right clicking, I'm dragging with my mouse and then right clicking to make my duplicate. Not using my space bar here because I'm just copying basically one stone at a time, figuring out as I go exactly how I want all these little details to look. And here, I think I want to even these out, the spacing. See how it's a little bit tight up here. So I like to have spacing perfect as much as I can. So I'll right click, and now you can see all those stones are perfectly spaced. And now for my little ball, let's go ahead and get that in place. A little ball on his hat. So in this case, we'll create the container on the outside. As we come around, you can see there's overlap here. So I'm going to come in here with my freehand pick tool and pick all these stones and right click on D here, and that's going to space them all the way around. Even though they're a little tight, I can live with that, or seeing how they're a little bit tight, I can straddle the ball. That will give me a little bit more distance between stones, so I will select them all again, respace them again. So now they're all perfectly spaced, but now they have a little bit more space between them, which we kind of need. And then it's just a matter of, well, what size stones can fill up this little ball. So we'll use as many 10s as we think we can to fill the ball up. But this will have to be a 6, and this will have to be a 6 because a 10 won't fit. So now that little ball is filled up. So now what I can do is I can come back in. Now we don't have to do this little drop shadow like the original design was. I like it, I think. So what I'll do is I'll stop here. I'll finish up the hat, and then that way the design will be done, and then we can do one version without the drop shadow, one version with the drop shadow, and determine what we like best. So we basically are going to do a hat very much the same way as we just did our ball. The little string will be represented by an SS6 stone. So what we want to do is create the border of the hat. And this is a technique where Easy Stone really makes the process easy. Now watch this and understand what we're going to do. We're going to take one stone and we're going to hit the space bar, and we're just going to kind of plop, plop, plop. There's nothing complicated about this. You can see what we're doing. Wherever the center of the stone is of the hat here, we're just kind of plopping down a stone here. Now here, we're going to actually switch over. I always switch over to 2 6s, and then we can go back to a 10 and a 10 because we have that sharp point. But you see what we did there. We just kind of plop, 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 plop. Now up here where things are a little bit more curved, we probably want everywhere there's a stone, what that actually kind of represents is a control point, okay? So you can kind of see what we did. We just kind of splattered out some stones along that edge. Now what I want to do is I want to create a container. So I'm going to take my freehand pick tool right here, and I'm going to pick up all those stones along that edge that I just placed there. Now I do like to make sure that do we have the right stone selected, and one way to do that is just to move it, take a look at what we just moved. Yes, that's what we wanted to move, but now I want to respace all of these stones along this edge that I just placed. So remember, we have to tell Easy Stone where to begin. We're going to hold our shift key down and add one additional stone here, or we can just click unselect and reselect. Now all the stones that we have selected are all one color and one size. So when I respace, what will actually happen is a new path will be created, and the stones will be placed on that path, and then I can right click to get rid of those stones. And then if I click on add stones, well, you see what it did there by respacing, we created a path. So now if I go back in and add stones, you see how they're all perfectly spaced, perfectly ready to go. Very, very easy to do it that way. So we're creating a container. That's what we're doing. So we're going to start here at the bottom and do the same thing that we did at the top. We're just going to place a few stones along the edge that we know we want to fill. We've now done that. I'm going to grab my freehand pick tool, select the appropriate stones that we want to respace. We've done that. I'm going to clear out what we already have because now we have a path. So I'm going to right click on BS to do that. So we're going to click on these stones, right click BS to get rid of them, and then add stones. And you can see they're recalculated. Stones are placed. And now all we're left to do is just like we did with our ball, the stones will basically guide us, is we've got to fill in this area that is left over. So I just start here at the bottom and right click as I go and start placing stones. And I've done enough to know what is going to fit and what isn't going to fit. So like here, I'm going to respace that. So it's a little bit tight, but it fits. So we'll just kind of keep going up here. This I'll switch over to a 10. And you know, a lot of times when you're doing these fills, especially with these more complicated shapes, you're not always going to get it perfectly the way you would like to have it. So you can see here, it's coming along. We could start back up here too. And again, it'll kind of guide you what is going to work and what isn't. So there really isn't too much guesswork. It's either a 10 is going to fit or a 6 is going to fit or one of each. So sometimes I'll try that. There we got one of each going. And when I do that, I'll switch back over. So I'll alternate. But in this case, we can fit 2 6s. So we'll put we can fit 2 10s in there. See, 2 10s here, a little bit too wide. So then in that case, we'll try 3 6s and keep that spacing a little bit tighter. So I really scrutinize when I'm doing fills. I really take the time and scrutinize and try to get the tightest fill that I can as I go along. So I'll spend a little bit more time getting all these fills in perfectly using a combination of 6s and 10s because I think it's worth it. Now you may not want to take the time to use 10s at all, in which case to make a really clean looking design, especially one like this with a fair bit of detail, to do it all in SS10s, you know, it just wouldn't look the same if you did it all in SS10s. So I try to use a combination of stone sizes because I think it looks better. And this isn't a very big area to fill anyhow, so it really doesn't take that long to get it all filled in. Now when we get down to the nitty-gritty here, this is where things get interesting because they don't always match up very well. In this case, it actually matched up pretty well. So you see here we've got some stones overlapping a little bit, but we can clear that up by just selecting one and holding our shift key and selecting a few others all the way along the edge here. And right click, and what's going to happen is all those stones that we just selected are all going to be evenly spaced now. So you can see that they're all the way through. And then we're going to evenly space the other direction. See, these two are touching almost. So now we can clear that up too. So just take a quick look all the way down and through. And that is the first piece of the puzzle. So that is our first version. Let's change it to red. And in all reality, you know, we probably spent 15, 20 minutes or so. And then we have a cute little Santa Claus. Small version, suitable for a child. So that's step number one. We did decide we're going to put our SS16 for our eyes. I decided that. I don't know what you're going to do for yours, but I think it does make those eyes pop a little bit. See there? I just think it looks a little bit better. And then we got rid of the mole. The little curly Q over here, I think it looks fine. So I think that pretty well finishes that design up. You know, what we could do looking at it, this may look a little bit strange on the eyebrow here, how we did that. So maybe, you know, we could have, I just deleted that one extra stone. I think it looks good the way it is. We could, if we wanted to make this a little bit more clear, perhaps what we could try, and this is something we could try, might as well show you, is you see where this line is that we just created? We're going to right click on that line, and these stones that are touching it will pop up. And now you can see the center of those stones are all along that line there. I'm going to, I just duplicated one, and I'm going to right click, and you can see now that the stone spacing got a little bit tighter. But what I wanted to see is does it look better having this? I can possibly move this, go back up here, so we'll resort those stones along that edge. See how tight these stones are? I'm going to make them a little bit tighter. I added one additional stone, and now they're just a little bit tighter. So the question is, does it look better? And I think I probably answered my own question. Let me readjust this eyebrow just a little bit here, because we can have that eyebrow kind of almost touching, just not quite. Let's pull this down a little bit. So does that look better? As we step back, let's look at the other version. Let's change it to red, and then we can look side by side. This version here, the eyebrow crosses over the bottom portion of his hat, and here it doesn't. You can see that I just maneuvered things and brought that rim up just a little bit, and it brought the eyebrow down a little bit so it doesn't interfere. And I think this looks cleaner, that little change, and so it's, you know, it just looks, you know, it's probably a minor point, but I do think that looks better. So we're going to go with this one, not this one. All right. So next step, shadow or no shadow. I believe I like shadow. So let's put it in, see what it looks like. And of course that is, you know, there's no right or wrong for that. So we're just going to add another row of stones. We need to sort these all out here. So we'll respace those. And let's see here. Wait for my computer to catch up. Now here, let's go ahead and use another technique that I haven't demonstrated tonight. I have demonstrated it previously. What we can do is, and these are all little tools that exist in EasyStone. If you want to use them, they're available to you. Is when we have a series of stones, and basically what we're wanting to do is create a secondary line of them. What we can do is we can just select the existing ones, draw a line, which creates a path, and then we can offset said path. So here we'll offset it. So now we have a new path. Now we have to make sure we have the right stone size selected. In this case, it's 10. And then we can just add in the stones in one swoop, like so, rather than have to place them ding, 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 ding. And then of course we'll respace them. That newly created line there. And so you can see now they're all perfectly spaced. So now we have to decide, well, do we want the shadow or not? So let's bring that over, and then it gives me an opportunity to show you another option. So do we like that extra shadow, or do we not like the extra shadow? Looking at it, I thought I was going to like it, and to be honest, I'm not sure that I love it. So I won't do the second line because I think it just looks better without it. But if we did want to do the second line, here's a challenge that we have, and I just want to kind of explain the simplicity of it. Is we made changes. We made changes to the eyebrows. We made changes to the eyes themselves, and of course the top of his hat and things. But we added the shadow to the original. Well, how now do I put the shadow on this one? Because the one here on the left is what we're going to use. Now, in actuality, we're not actually going to put a shadow at all. But I just wanted to show you, if you wanted to do that, how do you do it? Well, just think about this logically for a moment. The shadow, let's select the shadow area. Okay, so now we have the shadow. So how do we line it up perfectly in this one that we've already kind of modified? So the way to do that is to select this and find a common stone. In this case, what we call what I would call an anchor stone. So we have this little detail here at the chin of or the bottom of the beard rather. So we're going to go from the center of that to the center of this. And now, yes, we have stones on top of stones, but now we have the shadow applied to here, and we don't have to guess at the alignment and so forth. And then, of course, because we have stones on top of stones, we want to run a check spacing. There's found 84 objects that are sitting on top of one another. And now if we run check spacing, there are no objects sitting on top of one another. So now to finish this design up, we'll pull this one over here, the finished product. We're going to throw a weed box around it. So we'll add weed box. There's our weed box. We'll make it a light color weed box. And then I always make a duplicate of it. Right click to make a duplicate. So now we have a duplicate version. I hold my shift key down so it'll perfectly move it perfectly horizontally. And then I select my design and I hit QP for quick proof. And what that does is simulates the rhinestones for me. Adds a watermark if I've already defined it, which in this case I have. And it will automatically add a drop shadow. In this particular case, I'm not sure I'm in love with my drop shadow. So at any rate, that now becomes our finished product. We'll go ahead and export a proof image. I always export 1200 pixels JPEG, and we'll save the CorelDRAW file, and we'll name it 120215 because that's the date of creation. Santa child size. There's not enough child size designs anyhow, as far as I'm concerned. There's not a lot of them. And something to keep in mind too, especially for those of you who are new, getting started in here, you know, the two different stone sizes intimidate you. Don't be scared off. First of all, it's not that complicated, even on a single template. But secondly, this design will cut very nicely on holographic vinyl. So if you get some red holographic vinyl and cut this out, maybe you don't have SS16 stones for his eyes, just cut this out of a piece of holographic vinyl. You'll still get that bling factor. It'll be safe for kids because obviously there's no lead involved. And you don't have to create templates. You know, there's a lot of advantages to using that holographic vinyl. But here is the exported JPEG sitting on the desktop with my watermark and all the stone information available to go for you. Now, for those of you, because I did have a question about setting up your watermark, okay? If we go back to YouTube, folks, and we type in the search box, watermark, and we actually have a video on it. You can see here, watermark setup, adding a watermark to a bitmap image. So there's information sitting there right at your fingertips. But the thing that people forget about, so it explains how to create your watermark. When we export a proof image, notice that we give you the option for ping. Do you know what ping is? Ping means transparency. So when you're creating your watermark, you want to export as a ping file, not a JPEG. But to set up your watermark, you would just, here on QP, if you hit the control key, Control Shift, that will bring up, see, if you use the controls, you see up here it says watermark 2. If we hold the shift key in QP, notice it's just the regular watermark. So you can actually apply 2 different types of watermarks. Now I have the necessity to be able to do that. You probably wouldn't, but I just wanted to point out to set the watermark, if you haven't already, Shift QP will bring up the watermark options where you can specify where that ping file is sitting. See, mine's watermark.ping, and then these settings are set for you by default. You can modify those at will, but and then the other option is Shift Control will bring up the secondary watermark option, watermark 2, for a different watermark if you had the need to do that. So anyhow, and then of course, like I said, you can watch all the other details in that watermark video on how to actually apply the create the watermark file itself, and then apply the watermark here in EasyStone. All right, well, I guess I've talked long enough because I've gone over my time limit. Any questions before I hang up? We'll have one more session next Wednesday. I have no idea what we'll create. Maybe you'll send me something so I won't have to think so hard, and I'll just pick something you send me. Otherwise, I'll come up with something. And what I'll do is I'll go ahead, we've got the little baby version done. This would be cute as a decal, folks. Think about that. Be cute as a decal too. And something else to keep in mind, don't be afraid to use your rhinestone decal material. If you've made any rhinestone decals, don't be afraid to cut this out of holographic vinyl that I was telling you about. Don't be afraid to cut this out of holographic vinyl and then apply it to your clear rhinestone decal material. Heat press it, just like you would rhinestones. Now, the drawback to that is holographic vinyl does not hold up well outside. Silver, yes, but gold, red, and blues will fade and fade quickly outdoors. But this would be cute little decal to put on a book cover or a card maybe, or the refrigerator or whatever. You know, you could stick it to a present as a little decoration. So, you know, think a lunchbox, you know, who knows? Something that's going to be inside, laptop, tablet cover, whatever. So, you know, you got to kind of think outside the box. There's a lot of different opportunities out there to sell something. And so don't be afraid to use that holographic t-shirt vinyl. And some people ask, well, where do you get your holographic vinyl? Well, I usually get it from Stahls. They have quite a few different colors, but I also get it from SK Houston. That's another place. So it's skhouston.com, comes out of Houston, Texas. That's another place. And their website's kind of weird because it's kind of hidden up here. So you just click on online catalog, and then I don't know, somewhere around here, apparel, heat transfer vinyl, by the yard. I usually order by the yard, and they have glitter here. There's hologram right here. And so these are all the different colors. Different manufacturers have all kinds of different colors. And so just another one is Specialty Graphics. And I think Specialty Graphics has the most color choices. So let's see here. Sign and craft, our heat transfer vinyl is probably right here. And holographic. I don't know what this is. Specialty. I don't think I've ever seen that before. What's that? Oh yeah. I don't think that's really special. But they have green and rainbow and silver and gold and aqua. They have quite a few different ones. Orange, gold. I don't know what this is. Same colors. I guess by the sheet. They sell 12 by 20 sheets or rolls. That's what the difference is. So anyhow, yeah, the different places have it. Some have free shipping, some don't. So, you know, lots to consider. But at any rate, those are some of the different places where I have ordered from previously. But the bulk of my holographic vinyl all comes from Stahls, which they have a couple different shipping locations. Another one, if you're on the East Coast, would be Imprintables, I think is what it is. Imprintables. I used to order from them quite a bit, and then Stahls wound up buying Imprintables. I think it says it on here somewhere that they're a Stahls company. Heat transfer vinyl. Cut only. Go now. So these are cut. Nylon standard special effect. It must be under special effect. Their website's a little goofy too, but see they have metallic, glitter, textured, glow in the dark. I don't know if they call it add some shimmer and shine. I don't know. But anyhow, all these different companies have it available. You have to find out exactly where it's at on the website. But that's why I quit ordering from them. Their website is all kinds of goofy when Stahls took over. It's not readily a Spectra Cut, Echo Film. This is what I really like. The Echo Film is what I use for t-shirts. I really like that. And they have an Echo Film Plus, or they used to. It looks like now this Spectra Cut. I used to use that, but I don't know if they have an Echo Film Plus anymore or not. And the Plus was for nylon. But anyhow, I really like this material because when you're especially doing multicolored stuff, it only takes literally 1 second to transfer from the carrier sheet to your shirt. So if you're doing a 2-color design, time is money. So you literally just kiss the heat press. That's it. Just and it will stick to the shirt and release from the transfer. And then you put your second color on for the full press time of 15-20 seconds. So I really like this stuff because it works really well. And I like that you just barely have to touch it for the first color and then full length on the second color. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to post this video. It'll be available to everyone for viewing. So you'll be able to watch this over and over again. And next Wednesday, 7 o'clock, again, we'll have our final live session from there. Thanks for watching.